All right, so welcome to another rapid fire business story of the week. This is part of our rapid fire series, and today we have an incredible guest with us, someone who's achieved extraordinary success and is here to share their unique business journey with you. We're excited to hear their insights, so let's welcome them to the show. All right, so as this is our rapid fire series, we've got 1 minute or less to answer each question. So in a minute or less, give us the elevator pitch to your story and your life. Go.
Well, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started out in the call center business working for a company, but I got to run a branch office and learn how the entrepreneurial life could work. After 11 years of doing that, I started a retail sporting goods business as part of a franchise. I eventually had 2 locations, top 10 performer in revenue and eventually in profitability. Eventually sold those businesses. I learned I was not a lifetime retailer. I did a startup in software for retailers. I also had a public internet access business early in the internet's journey, 1997 to 2001, largest public internet access network in North America. And then that business went belly up during the dot-com boom. So I got to experience creative destruction. I went on to start a series of both for-profit and not-for-profit organizations in the pro-free market, pro-liberty space. And that's what I'm still involved in to this day.
So that's fascinating. And I would love to dig a little bit deeper. So tell us a bit more about what you're working on today that you're most passionate about and believe will have the bigged impact.
I have 2 major projects that I'm working on that I'm very excited about. One is called BeKinder, as in BeKinder.com, BeKynder. It's a small tech startup in the hospitality space. Our goal there is to make it easy for customers in the hospitality world to give positive and uplifting feedback, perhaps post a picture of an interaction they had with the valet who parked the car, the bellman who brought the bags to the room, the waiter or waitress that gave them great service in the restaurant, the front desk person who really did a nice thing for them at the hotel. We want to make it easy and as frictionless as possible for customers to tell the individual as well as the business, this person served me well and should be rewarded. And we're turning that into a social media platform over time. Second big project I'm working on is the Entrepreneurial Hall of Giants. We're going to build a giant museum, entertainment complex that celebrates the great entrepreneurs that build the businesses and make our lives better.
So this next question is one that every entrepreneur has dealt with. Tell us about a time where you failed. We often say failure is the first step to success. So think about a time where you failed in the past. What happened? What did you learn from it?
This is an easy story for me to tell. The biggest failure I had is when I nearly went bankrupt many, many years ago. I had the 2 retail stores I was talking about, and I had started the public internet access business. So I was fully leveraged, had every penny I had in my possession invested in those 2 businesses and some debt on top of it. And during the middle of that, my cash cow retail store, the building was built in the 1930s. The 4 gigantic 130-foot span wooden trusses snapped and my ceiling began to slowly collapse upon the sales floor. I had to close that business for 6 months while that ceiling and roof were all repaired. And meanwhile, I was bleeding cash left and right and nearly went belly up. Went to see a bankruptcy attorney with my wife, and he said, yeah, it's hopeless. You're going to have to declare bankruptcy. I walked out of that office feeling horrible and said to my wife, we're not going to do it. And I recalibrated and eventually dug out of that hole, did not declare bankruptcy, and eventually successfully sold that business and went on to other things. But it was an utter failure, risk-taking a little bit too much, some bad judgments, but then some resilience to get out of it.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And we're definitely going to have you back on the show to dive deeper into each of these questions. But for now, one thing that I often say is, and I tell this to my employees and the people who work with me and for me all the time, is that when a tree falls in the forest, if nobody hears it, did that tree actually fall? This brings me to this next question. How do you make sure that all of these amazing projects that you're involved in get noticed? What marketing and advertising methods have worked best for you? You've got a minute. Let's go.
I think the most important thing to make sure any endeavor is noticed is to really think deeply before you start about what your vision is, the grand vision you have for 5 years from now. If I start this project or this business, how will it change the world and make people's lives better? How will it impact people? You really need to think through that. Then you need to develop a specific mission, the operational focus of the enterprise. And within that framework, you really need to think about the core strategy. And core to that, of course, is understanding who your customer is and how to reach them. Essentially, every business in some form or fashion is creating content and distributing content, whether it's a product or a service or information, to a customer. The more you think through who that customer is, what the content is, and what the best channels of distribution are to them, the more likely you are to find success.
That was so awesome. We're definitely going to dive deeper into this on a later show. And as we approach our last question, before we ask people how people can get a hold of you, how people can reach you, learn more about the work that you're doing in your company, and we will include all that information in the show notes, what I wanted to ask you is, what is one piece of advice that you would offer to your younger self, to our audience, and to somebody, especially somebody who's just starting out in the same niche that you're in, but just doesn't know how to start or get going?
Two things. One is the number one barrier to people starting a business or pursuing whatever their dream might be is fear of failure. And you have to learn to fear never having tried more than you fear trying and failing and your perceived embarrassment. What you'll find out is when you fail, most people are going to be very supportive, and those who are not shouldn't be your friends anyway. So overcoming your fear early and fearing never having tried more so. And then I think the second thing is that people try to plan out into perfection the future. I'm going to think of the 37 steps I need to do to start this business or this project. And that's a terrible mistake. You need to know what the goal is, what that vision is, as I mentioned earlier. But the number one thing you need to do is think, what do I need to do today? What do I need to do tomorrow? What's the second thing I need to do after I do the first thing? And sequence them like that. And don't worry about the 12th step. Just focus on the first 2 or 3.
Amazing stuff. We're going to have to thank our guest today for being a guest on Business Story of the Week. And before we cut out on this episode, I wanted to ask you, how can people get a hold of you? How can people learn more about what you're doing? And how do people engage with you? And we will transcribe this and put it in the show notes for everybody to find.
First of all, thanks for having me on. People can reach me on the X platform at John M. Tillman, and they can reach me on my aggregate website, thecommandingheights.com.
All right, amazing. So you did it. Thank you for being a guest on the show today. Let me tell you what you can expect next. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all this, we're going to cut it into an episode. It will go on the Business Story of the Week page. So make sure you go on Apple Podcasts, review us, like us, go on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to us on Spotify, and this will come out in the next 30 days or so, depending on our workload and how many shows we have. We have had a lot of interest in the show lately, so we may be a little backed up, but the show will get out. In the meanwhile, we will send you clips that feel free to share on social. Also, the full episode, feel free to share any way that you like. The content is yours to share and put out there. We just ask that you mark us and tag us in the notes if you do. So in the copy, put hashtag Business Story of the Week, link back to us. We would appreciate that. And if you think that you might be interested in doing more podcasts, live ones and studio ones, Zoom ones, Riverside ones, there's a whole host of shows that likely, if you did this one and succeeded, you would probably be really great at, and a great way of getting your message out. So your host will talk to you about potentially getting you booked on a strategy call for a Business Story of the Week's sister company, Podcast Cola, or becoming a YouTube influencer through Viral Mirage. Thanks again for being a part of this. Looking forward to working with you.